Good morning to you, and welcome.
Not. Hold on, Dion. Hold. He's going live. We are ready yet to move.
From Park arrival speaks of birth to quarantines for sons. Where children pledge each faithful heart to guard Guyana's lands, to foil the shock of rude invaders who violate our earth, to cherish and defend forever the state that gave them birth. We forge a nation's mighty soul, construct a nation's faith. Freedom our everlasting goal, courage and truth our aim. Unyielding in our quest for peace, like ancient heroes brave, to strive and never cease, with strength beyond the slave. Guyana plant the glorious first to fame prosperity, joining the universal search for worldwide community. Your people must surrender greed, renew our polity, with one for never changing, with one nation's unity.
Good morning to you, members of the media, and all of the people who are online watching this press conference of the Working People's Alliance. Welcome. Today's press conference, we have Dr. David Hines, co-leader of the Working People's Alliance, Brother Rohit Kanai, co-leader of the Working People's Alliance, and Brother Takuma Ogunse, co-leader of the Working People's Alliance. I'm Dion Abrams, chairman of the Working People's Alliance, and today we will be focusing on current issues, the political landscape of Guyana. To begin the conference, Dr. David Hines will read the WPA's press release, and subsequent to that, we will have comments by Brother Takuma Ogunse and Brother Rohit Kanai. I hand you over now to Dr. Hines for the reading of the press release. Dr. David Hines. Not hearing, Doc.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Good morning again to the media and to those who are following us online. As announced last week, WPA would be contesting the upcoming elections as part of a coalition with the APNU. This is not unfamiliar territory for the WPA, since we were a foundation member of the APNU and remained an active member of the partnership for 10 years. We exited the APNU 5 years ago, but continued to be in touch with the partnership over the last 5 years. As is well known, our party advocated for a grand coalition of all opposition forces. While we continue to believe that such a coalition provides the best chance of defeating the PPP, we are confident that the APNU-WPA coalition could achieve the same outcome. While WPA enters these elections with much energy and optimism, we must make it clear that we remain unhappy over the behavior of GECOM. Nothing emanating from that body inspires confidence that the process would be free, fair, and just. There are far too many loopholes and potholes in the system. WPA therefore enters the election in protest against the rigged system. For the WPA, the coalition model is better suited to our plural society than the current one-party model. We have long concluded that no single party, however strong electorally, could realistically govern Guyana in an impartial and democratic manner. Communal pressures, coupled with a penchant for revenge against the other, are factors which militate against one party governing in the interest of all. Even without access to reliable polling data, WPA is convinced that the results of the elections would be as close as those of the last three. We have not discerned any significant shift away from traditional voting patterns. As such, I think the outcome would be determined by voter turnout. With that in mind, WPA would in the next 3 months continue to expend a lot of energy in helping to mobilize a better turnout among the opposition's traditional base. A fragmented opposition force presents a challenge that should not be overlooked, especially in a situation where anti-opposition forces are consolidating around the PPP. Splitting the opposition votes makes the task of defeating the PPP more challenging under the current system. WPA is not convinced that a minority government would propel democratic governance and political stability. For the WPA, the first order of business must be the defeat of the PPP. That party has in the last 5 years demonstrated its incapacity and unwillingness to manage our plural society against the backdrop of our rise as a petro-state. The PPP's drive to dominate the state and society has militated against any transformative outcomes in the political economy. The favorable macroeconomic indicators have not been matched by similar improvement in the quality of life of the broad masses. Similarly, race relations have deteriorated over the last 5 years as the PPP arrogantly pursues a policy of forced cooptation. Having been out of office for the last 5 years, the now opposition must concentrate on presenting policies to the electorate to which they can relate. Such policies must be both general to all Guyanese, regardless of difference, and particular to the various demographics. WPA is ready to contribute to the formulation of such policies, as well as advocating for them on the campaign trail. The WPA welcomes the second autopsy performed on the body of young Adriana Young. We have paid close attention to the comments of the pathologists who carried out that second autopsy.
Hello, Shwati.
We are,
Oh, yeah, but I'm
Brother Ogun, you can't, you have your own phone. WPA is heartened that the pathologist has given a second view. And we hope that the government would change its mind and embrace the broad view advocated by the pathologists in Georgia. In the interest of justice for the family, for the community, and for the country, we think that a solution to what has become a mystery in a small country would, in the final analysis, be very good for all of us. We again call on the government to come from behind the cover and to come clean. We still believe that the government is covering up something. As we go into an election, WPA is very clear that the Adriana Young issue, while it is particular to the family, it is general to the governance of our country. And we intend to make it a campaign issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, for your reading of the WPS press release. I'll now open the microphone to Brother Rohit Kanai for his comments and for his and then Brother Takuma will follow. Brother Rohit.
Thank you, Brother Dion. Good morning, everyone. If this government is shameless enough, and it is, to sell this nation the idea that Adriana's death was an accident, then it is capable of selling you the Brooklyn Bridge. And if it is arrogant enough, and it is, to close this case, and it will, it is saying it has the force to carry out its agenda by any means necessary. This election is not simply about race. It is about the survival of the Black race as a people with dignity and not as political pawns of the PPP. And it will sell you the idea it will win the elections when it cannot even account for a missing body in a pool. The question is, how will it account for the integrity of the elections, which is already in question? Thank you.
Brother Takuma, thank you, Brother Rohit, for your comments. Brother Takuma.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Good morning, members of the media and all of those who are joining us on the various social media platforms. I have to say two things. Now, when the chair of GECOM was appointed, it was the expectations of the country that since she was a retired judge and a person who exit that profession with a degree of reputation, it was the expectations of the nation that Madam Chair would have brought to the commission a level of fairness, rationality, balance, and would have able to instill confidence in the nation about the capacity of GECOM to deliver fair and free elections. We saw how she allowed herself to be pressured, and in our view, by both local and international forces to act not in the interests of the country and not in keeping with her sworn oath to be objective and impartial. But one would have thought that having experienced the 2020 elections, that the GECOM chair would have engaged in some amount of self-criticism and self-examination and tried to deliver to the country in the upcoming 2025 elections a GECOM that worked bearing in mind all the challenges of the 2020 elections and have learned its lessons and have prepared a level playing field for these critical elections so that all the contestants at the end of the exercise could come out and accept the results of the elections with a sense that it was fair and free. But instead of that, we are entering these critical elections with the chair leadership in question in a degree unprecedented in recent political history of GECOM post-1992. No other GECOM chair post-1992 is supervising an elections with the level of dissatisfaction with the work of the chairman. No other commissioner. And this, to our mind, is a retrogressive move instead of us 33 years after 1992. Having an elections that we all could be proud of, we are set to have an elections that will end up more likely throw us in the most profound crisis the country have ever seen over elections. And this is quite unfortunate. And we in the WPA wants to make it clear the chair has to hold herself responsible for whatever is the outcome of these elections. On the Adriana matter, I've had the opportunity to listen last night to an interview with the aunt of the deceased. And she raised an issue which was bothering me for quite a while, is why nobody, including the police and the owner himself, didn't volunteer to have that pool empty soon after the controversy developed. And I said whenever I get an opportunity, I would raise this matter because it was, with me, and it seems to be the obvious thing if I am the owner of the hotel, and in the context of everything that has been taking place and the accusations, one of the first things I would have done is common sense, is to let us agree to empty the pool. I don't know if it can't take days to empty a pool. It's a matter of hours or so. And the fact that the owner, didn't volunteer to empty the pool strengthened my own suspicion that he knew that in emptying the pool, it would have demonstrated that the child was not in the pool. I also couldn't, I am also baffled to understand why the police didn't request that they empty the pool. But more concerning, those were my hypothetical concerns, but I heard Adriana Aunt saying that they had requested that the pool be empty on numerous occasions, and it was not empty. They refused to empty the pool. And for me, my simple mind as a lay person, I think for that, it makes me beyond doubt that the owners knew that if that pool was empty immediately, that child would not have been there, and they would have had to deal with the consequences of that. And they refused to do it. And the police was so compromised that that obvious measure, they didn't insist. So for me, I am satisfied beyond doubt that this is a massive cover-up by the PPP, because one of their trusted lieutenants in Tushenu was involved. And for me, it will take quite a lot to convince me otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Takuma, for your comments. I'm going to now invite the media to ask questions of any of the three persons who have spoken, and so they can have any matters clarified that they want. Over to the media.
Good morning. Is everyone hearing me?
Yeah,
Quite
yes.
clear.
Naomi for the Guyana Chronicle. My questions are for Dr. Hines. I'd like to shift your focus back on the matters related to the coalition. Could you confirm if you are the prime ministerial candidate for the APNU WPA coalition at this time?
Not hearing you, Dr. Hines.
I
Anastasia, I see your hands. Anastasia.
yeah, no, I am not the prime ministerial candidate. We have not entered discussions with our partners on the question of the prime ministerial candidate.
I have another question for you. How many members and what does the WPA bring to the coalition at this time?
We will be very happy, Miss Paris, if you can visit the WPA office. We will peruse our membership roll with you.
All right, finally, would you or the WPA consider the AFC being a part of the coalition? I know given that talks have been brought along before, and the AFC has signaled that they would join forces with like-minded people. So at this time, could you say what is happening in that particular area with the AFC and the now APNU WPA coalition?
Well, we have never been in talks with the AFC. As you know, the AFC was having talks with the PNC/APNU. And so we don't know what went on in those talks beyond what we have read in the media. Regarding your initial question, whether we would welcome the AFC, of course, we have said over and over again that the broadest coalition of all opposition forces is what we desire. So even at this 11th hour or 12th hour, we would welcome the AFC and other opposition forces joining the coalition and making it as broad as possible. Because as we have said, our initial objective is the removal of the PPP, the defeat of the PPP at the elections. not because we feel that the PPP is not a national party and that it doesn't have anything to offer Guyana. The PPP represents at least half of the electorate. And you cannot just wish away a party that represents half of the electorate. But we feel that the PPP in office by itself has behaved very badly. It has marginalized all opposition forces. It has sought to control every aspect of political life in the country. And so therefore, we feel that for Guyana to move in the direction that will ensure that all of its citizens live together and benefit from the newfound wealth, that we cannot have a one-party PPP government in office. WPA is prepared in the future to welcome the PPP as part, excuse me, of a governing coalition. We don't believe that an APNU WPA government or an APNU WPA AFC government has all the answers to the country's problems. We feel the PPP must stay. They represent half of the population, and that half of the population has a right to be represented in government. And the other half of the population that supports the present opposition also has a right to be part of the governance of the country. So our objective ultimately is for a national government of all forces. But the political system that we have doesn't allow for that. So we are saying that, look, as a short-term objective, the PPP has to be removed and to be replaced by a coalition of parties on the opposition side. While it's not a national coalition in the sense that it represents all the people of the country, it nevertheless signals to the country what could be done when more than one party is in government. That is why we are attracted to coalition, is that you have more than one party in government. So that if one party wants to behave bad, even if it's a big party, you would have other parties in the coalition and say, no. You can't do that. So even within government, you will have what we can loosely call an opposition, because we have had bad experiences. We have 59 years independence. We have had bad experiences on both sides of the political divide with one party rule. So yes, the WPA would welcome the broadest coalition to contest the elections, to defeat the PPP, because in defeating the PPP, we are defeating arrogance. We are defeating stubborn one-party government. So we have to remove the PPP from office in order to lay the groundwork for a broader governance and a national consensus. We cannot have one party governing our country when Venezuela is at the door. We cannot have one party governing the country when billions of dollars are coming in and only the representative half of the population are deciding how that money would be spent. More than ever, our country wants the broadest possible governance. I guarantee you that if the WPA were in government, the killers of Adriana Young would have been brought to justice already, because we would not have been part of a cover-up. But because you have a one-party government and that party covers up something, the government covers up. But if you have several parties, it's very difficult for one party to pull what the PPP is pulling with this Adriana thing. Thank you.
And to add to that, Dr. Hines, the WPA does not support the view as expressed by Barajagli that the parliament gives the opposition that kind of coalition appearance, as he's seeming to argue. And we know what is happening in the parliament. The opposition is practically shut out. The speaker does not allow motions that are presented by opposition forces, which will question the nature of the government and the actions of the government. So parliament has basically become a rubber stamp. And so the argument that the opposition has a voice is one that doesn't ring a true bell. I noticed Ms. Williams having her hand up. You may go ahead with your question if the Guyana Chronicle has completed its questions.
Good morning. This question is for Dr. Hines. I'm asking from Scotia News. So now that the PNC and the WPA would have come out and said that they are collating, you would have mentioned earlier about the billions of dollars that are coming into the country and there's only one party in charge of spending it. What I want to know is, have the coalition started discussions in relation to what changes they would like to see in the oil sector? And can you say from a WPA perspective, what are some of the changes that you would like to see implemented if the coalition gets into government in 2025?
We are at the moment in the process of exchanging ideas. Both the WPA and the PNC have been working on their manifesto separately. And now that we have formally announced that we are going into the elections together, we would, in the coming days and weeks, sit down and merge our two manifestos to come up with a larger coalition manifesto. But in relation to the oil sector, first and foremost, the WPA recognizes that there is a large body of opinion that is calling for a renegotiation of the oil contract. And I think as responsible parties, we cannot ignore that body of opinion. WPA recognize that the initial contract that was signed was done within a particular context. And so we are not overly harsh on those who signed that coalition. They were dealing with circumstances that were before them at that time. We feel that as we have moved on almost a decade, it is time to review those arrangements. So WPA will first and foremost review those arrangements. As a government, we would support putting together an expert committee that is made up not just of the political parties, but of experts, environmental experts, financial experts, oil experts, put together a national committee to advise the government on the areas of the previous contracts that need to be revised. So that's the first thing we would do, is to have a serious revision of the original oil contract, taking into consideration the changes that have occurred since, and taking into consideration the fact that what we know now, we didn't know then. And we would be guided not by politicians per se, but we'll be guided by people with expertise in that area to advise us on what should be negotiated. We are not naive to believe that 7 to 10 years on, that there is nothing in the oil contract that would have to change. We anticipate that there are aspects of that contract that will have to change to bring it up to date. And that is what contracts are about. Contracts are there to be changed once both sides agree on the contract. Now, we recognize that while we as government and as Guyanese political people are calling for changes, we will have to have Exxon and the other oil companies agree to change. And so we will engage those oil companies in a serious way about the changes that have occurred since and how we could together help to make the contract much more balanced. It is no doubt that the present contract is biased and balanced in the favor of the oil companies. And when we signed off that contract, we knew nothing about oil as a country. We were a new oil producing country, and so we therefore could not bring to bear institutional knowledge. Now we have institutional knowledge. We will have to sit down with Exxon and the other companies and said, look, you know, we recognize that the first signing benefited you in a lopsided way, but now things have changed. And so we would like to amicably, because we don't want to chase away investors. We don't want to chase away Exxon. What WPA feels is that we have to work with Exxon, but we have to work with Exxon, starting with the fact that we represent Guyanese, and we have to put Guyana's case on the table. The oil belongs to Guyana. We are the biggest investors, so to speak, because we have the commodity. As some people are saying that we are, you know, Exxon and the oil companies are the only investors. We are the big investors because the oil belongs to us. And so therefore what WPA is saying is that we have leverage now. Our oil is sweet. Our oil reserve is larger than Exxon and even the present government is letting on. And so we have leverage now. And WPA is arguing that the time has come for us to use that leverage to ensure that Guyanese and Guyana have a better return for our oil and our investment. We will take a nationalist position, but our nationalist position would not be a stupid nationalist position, because we don't have the capacity as a country to you know, mine the oil and take advantage of it. So we have to work in a partnership. But our partnership would be driven first and foremost by Guyana's interest, and secondly by common sense. We live in a global community, and we cannot function as though we are an island and we have all this leverage and so on and so forth. If Exxon were to pack up and go tomorrow, it is not just our oil that would be in trouble. Our national security would be in trouble. So we have to take all these factors into consideration. So that is one of the big things that we will do. Now, we would want a National Petroleum Commission. The PPP government has promised a National Petroleum Commission, and it has not delivered. And we feel that we should have a National Petroleum Commission and a national oil company. A national oil company, because if we have a national oil company, then that company could invest in the oil sectors on Guyana's behalf. You see, that oil company could bid for blocks. So we would very immediately seek to put in place a national oil company that could invest in our own resources. And while it would be a state company, a state-owned company, we would move to ensure that the maladies that come with state-owned oil companies, we are watching what is happening in the rest of the world. And so we would try as much as possible to avoid those pitfalls. To avoid those pitfalls, you have to keep two sets of people out of control of a national oil company. You have to keep the politicians from having overt and dominance over a national oil commission. And secondly, we have to keep the avaricious private sector away from it, because the private sector, as Transparency International has said, is that you know, the economic elites have captured the state and the government under the PPP. We will have to turn that back, because those forces are not necessarily interested in the national well-being of the country. They're interested in money and profits. And so a national oil company should not be dominated by politicians or by the economic elites. It should be nationalist in nature, but not controlled by our politicians and our greedy private sector. And so those are two of the big things that WPA would immediately do as far as the oil sector. The third thing is what is well known to the country. We feel that the oil resources should be used not in a willy-nilly way to buy votes. Our oil resources should be used first and foremost to put our people in a state of empowerment. So that 50% poverty with the kind of economic growth that we are showing at the macro level is a sin. And so part of the oil policy would be how we use the oil resources to deal aggressively with poverty. Now, poverty has come down in the last decade from about 61% to 50%. And it will come down even if we don't do anything aggressive. But the rate at which poverty is, the slow rate at which poverty is being decreased, WPA is unhappy with it. And we think we need an aggressive assault on poverty. And as such, as we look around the world, the most successful approach to dealing aggressively with poverty is to use the oil resources as part of transferring wealth directly to the people. Now, we feel that we owe the Guyanese people, WPA feels strongly, that we owe the Guyanese people $900,000 because our research has shown that we could give each household $1 million to begin with. And that $1 million would be a strong injection at the level of the family to deal with poverty. And so WPA intends to make its cash transfer proposal of $1 million, which would be mandated by Parliament. We would not give out a cent unless Parliament makes it law. So that for us, it's not about giving the people a handout. It is not about giving the people a grant. It's about dealing structurally with a problem that has been there from the time of slavery, come right through indentureship and colonialism, and has haunted us since independence. And that is to deal with poverty. With $1 million in hand, people can make, a family can make an investment. An investment in a small business, that's enough to start a small business. You can't start any meaningful small business with $100,000. With $1 million in hand, a family that is in extreme debt can be able to clear off a lot of debt that is hanging over their heads. With $1 million, a family could pay down on a house lot. The government likes to talk about how many house lots it has distributed. Let them tell us how many people would have gotten the house lots but are not able to pay down for the house lots. $1 million to somebody will help them pay down for a house lot. You know, so that is the third important thing that we are going to tackle as far as the oil sector is concerned. There are other ideas that we have, but those three we put in the public space for now.
Thanks, Dr. Hines. Ms. Williams, are you through with your questions? Hello? Ms. Williams? Okay, then I guess she has. All right, I didn't get you clearly there, but is there any other question?
No other questions from me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from Brother Takumo or Brother Rohit? Can I?
Yes, Brother Chair. The government has repeatedly said that the opposition is trying to get through the back door. We have to go through the front door this time. Clearly, we must win this election if we want our voice to be heard. We have no alternative. As you stated earlier, the opposition has been shut out completely from having a voice in Parliament, and it is imperative that we regain our voice, not as an opposition, but as a governing party. And as a governing party, we will be in a position to be an inclusive government.
Thank you, Brother Rohit. Brother Takumo, any other comments?
No.
Right. Any final words, Dr. Hines? Because the press or the media seem to have exhausted their question.
I just want to say that the upcoming election would be a referendum on some very important issues from the WPA standpoint. First of all, it's a referendum on race relations, especially the government's attitude to ethnic groups that are not part of its natural constituency. We feel that our country will not go forward unless we correct that big and abiding problem in our political economy. So race relations is something that we are prepared to talk about on the campaign trail. I know that we have been accused by the Guyana Chronicle and other sections of the media of causing racial trouble in the country. We sympathize with those who cannot recognize the difference between causing racial trouble and trying to do something to end the racial trouble. Racial trouble has been there long before the WPA came into being, and we pledged ourselves at the birth of our party to deal with the racial problems in the country. Our party came into being as a result of something called race relations commissions that were set up by two of our pre-party members, that is ASCREA and IPRA, an African and an Indian organization led by Brother Yussi Kwayan and Moses Bagwan, respectively. And so it is part of our tradition to deal with the question of race head on. We are not going to shy away from it. In doing so, we will be called racist because there is a kind of backwardness that passes for political commentary that calls race advocacy for racial consciousness, advocacy for racial equality. We call it racism. We must be the only country in the world that do that. And you know, it's something, if the WPA gets into government, we have to deal with the way in which this present government has really poisoned the consciousness of a part of our population as far as their understanding of key concepts like race. You know, how can we live in a racially plural society and not have discussions on race? You know, take for example, the PPP is telling the WPA and the opposition, please go and campaign in the Indian community, but it is campaigning in the African community. The PPP is campaigning in the African community, but telling the WPA and others, no. When you all campaign, the African community is racism. Go campaign somewhere else. Why would the WPA take advice from its opponents? If I am fighting an election against you, why am I going to take your advice? It is just like what the government and the police did at Tuchen. The people are in there and they say, we want to go in and see what's happening in that pool. We believe this child is it. But they tell them, don't worry with the pool, don't worry with the hotel, go home. And that's what they're telling the WPA. You know, don't campaign in the African Guyanese community. That's racism. But the PPP is saying that the African vote is premium. If the African vote is premium, why do you not want us to campaign among African Guyanese? Why you want to campaign among them? So we are going to raise the question of righting the ethnic and racial wrongs in this country. And wrongs have been done not just to Africans. Wrongs have been done to Amerindians. Wrongs have been done to East Indians as East Indians. And so we have a historical duty to deal with the racial question and to ensure we're not going back to Africa. We're not going back to India. We're not going back to China and Portugal. For all intents and purposes, we are here. And we have to find a way to live in peace, or else no amount of oil wealth will save us. The other big referendum is a referendum on where we want to take our oil economy in the future. The WPA, as I articulated earlier, have ideas on what can be done. But from a larger perspective, the election is about which direction we want to go. We have seen what has happened with petrol states. Many of them have gone in the direction of authoritarianism and autocracy. WPA feels that Guyana should not go in that direction. We have seen oligarchies take over the oil process, and it is the rich, the small rich people at the top who have benefited. WPA wants to break that cycle because we see this government trending in that direction. So for us, the oil sector, we have to deal with it at several levels. The first level is to try to get the investors to recognize our worth and to recognize that we own the oil. The second thing is to negotiate better contracts, better contractual arrangements for Guyana. We need to get more from our oil. And thirdly, it is the distribution of the oil resources. We do not feel that almost 60% of the oil resources should go towards infrastructure. If you put that amount of money into infrastructure, what you're in fact saying is that education is okay, healthcare is okay, that investment in research and development is okay. You're saying the 40% that is left, those areas of the economy are okay. You are saying that agriculture is okay. No, we are saying that those other areas of the political economy are as important as infrastructure. So we are not saying that we will not continue to invest in infrastructure, but we will have to scale back. The WPA is advocating scaling back the amount of resources we are putting into that sector and to do a more democratic distribution of the resources, taking into consideration where we are weak. We are weak on education. And we stress in education because WPA intend to take the education argument on the road. We are weak. We cannot have a 50% dropout rate in Guyana. In colonial times, our literacy rate was 96% and upwards during the colonial time. And in post-colonialism, almost half of our country is functionally illiterate. WPA is saying that we have to put money into an aggressive program of literacy. An aggressive program of literacy. We cannot have a semi-literate population and talk about development. The two don't go hand in hand. And that is why we are not opposed to our cash transfers be linked to school attendance. We are not saying it's mandatory, but if the experts tell us that that is going to help education, we are not opposed to it. So
who can you trust? Here again, you will.
We will spend more at the University of Guyana. You cannot be the fastest growing economy in the world and you have a third, fourth rate university. Our university must become a first rate university that is engaged in research and development, not just about oil, but post-oil. We must have an aggressive environmental program where we are training our young people in environmental science. We must have a strong program at the University of Guyana where we are looking at alternative to fossil fuel. These things must be part of the education system. We must have a department at the University of Guyana on border studies, trans-border studies, border studies. We have a problem on our border. Our young people should be studying border issues, not as a course here. We must have a center for border studies with, of course, practical emphasis on Venezuela, but it's not just Venezuela, it's Suriname, and we have a big neighbor, Brazil, and so forth. We have to make border studies part of our curriculum, both at the lower level, but at the university level, at the research level, so that you are doing research on border studies. You are doing research on the environment. You are doing research on alternative to fossil fuel. We must become the hub for research and development in those areas in this part of the world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hines, for your comments.
Chair, if I may.
Sure.
During the 79-80 period, the PPP always insisted that the WPA restrict its work to the Black community. For them, the Indian community was off limit to the WPA. So it is the PPP who has deliberately segregated this country when the opportunity for it to be more integrated existed. The PPP has maintained this policy and will continue to maintain it as long as they think it gives them dominance over the country. Now, I'd like to point out that Walter Rodney did not fight against the Black population. He fought for it. Now we are caught in the same position that the Indian government wants monopoly on the Indian population and pretends it is fighting in the interests of the Indian population. It's not doing that. You cannot divide a country along race and claim one race will benefit at the expense of the other. Every study of an oil economy will reveal that if the oil wealth is hogged by one sector of the population at the expense of the other, it's a formula for civil war. We have seen this over and over and over. We have to learn something from that experience. If we continue this path where the distribution of the oil resources favors one race at the expense of the other, we are setting ourselves up for a situation that it's horrible to even contemplate. So we have to strive to remove a government that utilizes race and the Indian population to its benefit, but not to the benefit of the Indian population in Guyana. We have to make that separation between the government and the race it claims it represents, when there are many brothers and sisters within the Indian community who are certainly not benefiting from the oil wealth.
But Chair, just before we go, one other thing as far as policy is concerned, and I'm going back to the education policy. WPA would fight very, very hard for our children who will leave high school. They must become multilingual. We cannot have Venezuela coming in back door, so many Venezuelans coming into our country, and our people don't know how to speak Spanish. So Spanish will become an integral part of our curriculum, all right? The Chinese are here, and our people can speak Chinese, but the Chinese can speak English. So we will, in the WPA, will make language a very important aspect of our policy making, that our young people will graduate from high school as multilingual, speaking Chinese, speaking Spanish, and speaking our native language, Creolese. We intend to make Creolese an official language in Guyana that is taught to our people. That's our first language. And you cannot have a language as your first language. And then your children go to school and they have to learn in a second language. English is our second language. Creolese is our first language. And so WPA is saying our people must be multilingual. English, Creolese, Spanish, Chinese to begin with. It is very important for the cultural moorings of our people to learn their own language. And it is very important to our economic security and our security as far as our borders are concerned, for us to learn the language of those who want to take away our land. One of the things we will beat slavery with is that we create Creolese as a new language to confront slavery and colonialism, where the masters couldn't understand what we were saying. And so, as we are dealing with Venezuela, we have to be able to speak their language. So we know that when they're among us and they're trying to derail us, they're trying to undermine us, our country, especially the young people, must become literate in the language of the enemy. And so WPA takes this question of language as development, not language as for the sake of speaking, but language as development. And so, therefore, that's an area that we intend at the level of policy to fight a lot for.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your contributions to today's press conference. To the media, I want to thank you for being here with us to raise your questions and to seek clarifications to all those who have been watching online. We're grateful for your presence, and so we hope that you will continue to follow the information coming out of the Working People's Alliance by our press conference next week, same time, on the same media outlet. So do have a good day. Enjoy your afternoon. See you next week when we again present the views of the Working People's Alliance. And goodbye.